Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Prasad Konduri. I'm from Capital One.
And I'm Amit, Sheth.
So, I'm sure many of you have heard about Capital One as being one of the leading banks in the nation. So, just want to check how many of you use, raise your hand if you use any of our Capital One products like either a checking account or a credit card. That's good.
Yeah. In case you guys are not using our products, we are offering free checking accounts to you after this. So see us outside. Yeah.
By the way, that was a joke, and that's not what we are here for. So we are here to talk about a tech transformation that we are going through, a rapid transformation, and the challenges that it is bringing in terms of visibility and monitoring our IT applications. So just to name some of the transformations that we are going through, I'm sure many of you have heard that Capital One is trying to go all in on cloud. We are going to be 100% in cloud, and we have a zero data center mandate by 2020. So by end of next year, we'll all be all in cloud. Thank you. So now, we are also having trying to build our own products. We have a build versus a buy strategy, so we are trying to build our own software products in cloud. And also, as we go to cloud, we're trying to decommission our monolith applications and trying to build everything as API-based, microservices-based, and the whole 9 yards. And on top of that, we're also rebuilding our data ecosystem. We're building our data lake in cloud for analytical purposes and machine learning and purposes. And then we also are building our streaming platform in cloud for real-time needs. And on top of that, we're also driving machine learning solutions for our customers. Some of the, I'm sure some of you may be aware that our fraud detections, credit card approvals, there are several other use cases that we have machine learning in place, live today. And of course, last but not least, we are agile, DevOps, push button deployments, and the whole 9 yards, right? So this is all the tech transformation that is going on, and this has been going on at a rapid pace over the last 2 years, or maybe a little over than 2 years. Now that rapid transformation has brought in some challenges, especially when it comes to monitoring and managing our IT applications in cloud. Having a good visibility, into our systems. So just to draw some parallel, imagine, what we went through with this transformation is, imagine you are driving on a freeway at a high speed, and suddenly your dashboard goes blank. Boom. How comfortable do you feel not having a good visibility into the dashboard and running, driving on the highway, right? So now on top of it, let's say if your road also doesn't have a good visibility, right? How would you even know that there is a block on the road, right? So well, this is exactly how it was feeling like for us, not having good visibility while running our IT in cloud. So how did we mitigate this risk, right? So that's what we're going to talk about now. Having a good governance system can help give that good visibility into managing IT applications. So let's talk about, coming back to technology, right? Let's talk about how having a good visibility can help you manage your IT applications effectively in cloud, and how having a good governance system is critical, so you can do it consistently. So it's not just doing it once for one application, but how can you do it consistently for all the applications in cloud that for Capital One. So now, so I'm sure you may be familiar with this picture, right? Most of the people, this is how monitoring is setup is in place for most of you as well. So you'll have a bunch of monitoring tools, monitoring the health of your applications, both the availability as well as performance of your applications. And then you use that data either to visualize on a dashboard or you basically send it to some alert detection system. When there is a breach in the threshold, some issue occurred. So you send a notification to your support teams. So now this setup is same as well for Capital One, but then we had one challenge with this setup. As we are rapidly advancing in our tech transformation, rapidly going into cloud, there were several instances where we didn't have the right monitor in place, where we missed monitoring altogether. So we only found out after the fact that an outage occurred, and we didn't know that an outage was was happening or about to happen, right? So and then also further investigation led to know that maybe people didn't set up the right monitors in place. Maybe they didn't have the right alerting in place. Maybe they didn't set up the right notification in place, right? So we were going through all these challenges, and I'm sure some of you may be maybe familiar where you end up detecting an issue after the fact. So and we had same problems as well, right? So how did we? So what we did is really thought about having a system in place where we have a visibility into what the monitoring system looks like. How do we know if we have the right monitors in place across our enterprise, right? So what we built is called as a monitoring governance system. This is a completely data-driven approach where and we're going to go more in detail. Amit is going to talk about it, where we try to track all the alert setups and alert configurations across various monitoring tools that we have in place, and compare it against our standard and report them what their monitoring gaps are. All right, and the idea really is to detect the issues as soon as we can, and also be able to acknowledge and engage the right people as soon as we can. So that's the idea behind this monitoring governance system. All right. So I am now going to pass it to Amit, who's going to go in detail in terms of what exactly is this system, right? How did we set it up? What are the benefits we are seeing, and so on and so forth. Amit?
Thank you, Prasad. So we ran into several of these high severity incidents like a couple of years back, and then we got direction from our senior executives to set up standardization and governance across our enterprise. So we started a meeting with other compliance groups across Capital One, and we never did governance and monitoring, so we wanted to know how to do it. So one thing we found common across all of these is that you need to have standards to do governance. So we started there. We basically documented and cataloged all the different cloud services as well as applications that we use at Capital One. So that way, we have a full inventory of what are the things that we need to monitor, and then what are the metrics that we need to monitor across those. We also went a step further and listed key metrics, which we call our tier 1 metrics. And these are the metrics that typically drive alerts and are the ones that you look at whenever you run into an issue in the beginning. So as an example, you're all familiar with EC2 instances. So typically we met with our LOB partners, our lines of businesses, and we found that they typically look at CPU utilization and status check in case of EC2 instances. And these are all coming from CloudWatch. So that's an example of tier 1 metric here. Oh, it's not updating.
Sorry, he was trying to share some other screen, and I think it didn't switch. Remove the purpose of presentation.
Okay,
yeah.
Now probably it will make more sense of what I was talking about. Sorry. So again, going back into, I'll quickly show you all the list of services that we have, and here is the EC2, right? And I talked about the tier 1, tier 2 metrics, and examples, which are CPU and status check. So going back. So now that we have the standards, you want to also report on the compliance, right? So, checking to make sure. Yeah. Okay. So we wanted to come up with a data-driven approach of doing this, where we accurately knew what was going on in our environment. So this is the infrastructure and framework that we built for that. This is like a high-level architecture of our system. So we basically are tool agnostic. We encourage teams to use whatever monitoring tools and products that they want to use, and then we make API calls to pull the monitoring metrics from those tools, and using our data pipeline, and then we transform the data and then put it in our enterprise data lake, and then we have some ETL processes which roll up this data, aggregate it, and then we use a BI reporting tool to generate reports from that. So I'm going to show you a quick demo of that system as well. Okay. So again, a disclaimer, even though this system is running in production right now, there's actually seems like I'm the only one doing a demo here. So even though the system is running in production now, this is actually mocked up data. So it's our environment looks different than what you're seeing here. And again, we this showing like an infrastructure compliance view of our environment across Capital One. These are our different lines of businesses that we use. And if you guys recollect, Ryan Lopopolo had a suggestion yesterday in his talk where he was recommending that you should tag your services. So that is something that we take very seriously in our environment, and we've been doing that for a couple of years since we moved into cloud. So because of that, we are able to group all of our services, instances by their application names, which we call ASVs, and then we are also able to join it with our CMDB database, and also know who are the engineering lead, executive, business executive for those applications. So again, like I said, we are tool agnostic. So on an infrastructure level, we say we are using CloudWatch and Datadog, right? Then these are the different services that we collect metric data for, as an example of few of them for this mock-up dashboard. Let me just select one application, and then as soon as I click this, you guys can see that it pulls up a list of all the services that we use as part of that application stack. I'll just pick EC2 instances, and if we go down, then it is showing us that there are 2 EC2 instances that are part of this application. It shows you the IP address, region, availability zone, all these other metadata, and then we also see what is the monitoring tool that we are pulling these metrics from, and what tool we are using for monitoring this application. And then we also, because we are able to successfully pull metrics from those instances for this application, we mark them as compliant on our tier 1 metrics that I showed before for EC2, which were CPU and status check. Now, this is important because, like Prasad was saying before, a lot of times, when we run into ISV incidents, we find that we are not even having the monitoring instrumented for those applications. So having the monitoring data available to us, helps us in reducing our mean time to detect for those ISV incidents. We also pull the alert configurations from these monitoring tools, and also check to see if they are setting up alerts for these tier 1 metrics, right? And again, this is important for reducing the mean time to acknowledge for those incidents again. In this example, you can see that it's not set up, and that's why we give a compliance score which is 0. If you noticed earlier, from a monitoring point of view, that this application is 100% compliant. But from an alerting point of view, there are some gaps, which is what we intend to provide with this. Again, there's not a monitoring tool. There's really like a governance tool intended to show gaps in monitoring and alerting. For the monitoring products, we are tool agnostic, but for alerting, we actually have standardized it to use PagerDuty as our enterprise alerting standard. So if you're running something in Capital One production environment, then for alerting, you need to be sending those through our PagerDuty setup. For non-prod, you can use email, Slack, it doesn't matter. So we pull all these alert configurations from Datadog monitors, CloudWatch, alarms, and parse it, check to make sure that we are setting up the right alerts. And then we also pull the PagerDuty service name from that, make sure it is a valid service name. We check if it has escalation policy defined for it. So for this, we pull data from PagerDuty using APIs and then join it on these ASV tags. And then other things we check are there should be at least 2 people on escalation policy, and you should be having phone numbers, because if there's a incident in the middle of the night, we can't really expect people to be checking their Slack or emails. So those are some of the standards that we have. And then we generate these compliance reports and send them to the service owners on a regular basis. So they have a customized report on what is the health of their application from a monitoring point of view and or a governance point of view, and exactly also what are the gaps that they need to close as part of their process. So getting back to this, we talked about the standards, we talked about our reporting. Still not coming. Oh. Okay, thanks. And what we found out in a lot of these cases is we have a lot of smaller teams and newer services which basically don't have a lot of experience in the monitoring space, and that's why we started this other effort called monitoring and alerting as code, where we instrument the monitoring as well as alert configurations as part of your stack build out. So we work with our enterprise code deployment pipelines, and if you use one of our enterprise pipelines, then you automatically get monitoring and alerting setup depending on the services that you use when you're building out your stack. So you don't need to do anything extra for that. So this was again very well received. So what are the different values, examples of the value that we have provided by doing this effort? So we productionized this system about like 6 months back. So now several hundred teams at Capital One use our dashboards to see the gaps in their monitoring and alerting setup, right? And then this has definitely been valuable to several applications. And then you can see in high-sub incidents, teams that are doing their monitoring and alerting correctly have lower MTTD, A, right? And also, another thing that we observed is because you are instrumenting your monitoring and you have all this data available to you, when these high-sub incidents happen, your mean time to resolve also goes down and your root cause analysis happens much faster because you have all the data that you need to perform that. So what are we doing next with this? So obviously, as we continue with our transformation journey and move on to multi-cloud, we are continuously bringing in additional services, applications, additional tools. So we keep on onboarding those. There's a continuous effort on that. We are continuously making our monitoring and alerting as code broader across other tools and services as well, and easier for people to use. And then another thing that we found out, particularly around the alerting setup, is that alerting is, and the thresholds are very subjective to the applications, and you don't have a one size fits all. So what we realized is that instead of keeping static thresholds, we really want to know that there was an anomaly versus exceeding or going below some threshold. So we are doing a lot of research and we've done several POCs in this space where we are taking all this monitoring data and incident data and using machine learning across that to come up with dynamic thresholds for applications that change depending on the time of the day of the week, and so on. And where it also learns what is the right kind of alerting for those applications. So with that, I'll give it back to Prasad.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. So just to summarize, what we learned is really having a good visibility into your IT and applications is extremely important for you to well manage your IT. And having a good monitoring in place will help us get there, to have good visibility. And last but not least is having a good governance system will bring consistency. Make sure that everybody is, following it appropriately versus, having some gaps here and there. So visibility, monitoring, governance is really, what we have done at Capital One to bring, to make sure that our environment is stable, our environment is being well managed. So that's the crux of the session. And by the way, this is what it feels like for us without governance. Again, if you have any questions, you can contact us. And thank you for your time.
And we are hiring, by the way. So.
Yeah. Yes, we can take few questions, I'm hoping. Yeah, definitely.
What does your alerting and monitoring as code look like? How do you integrate all these separate services into a single monitoring code base? Is that like a large configuration file with every single service that you build? And how does that integrate all the different pieces of your monitoring stack together?
Sure, yeah. It's so I think what we do is it's not like so first and foremost, for any given application, again, as Amit was telling, tagging is critical, right? So we know exactly what their stack looks like. So it's not going to be like a huge, gigantic config file. So we know exactly what that stack is going to look like. And for that given stack, we know what we want to monitor, right? And for those monitors, we will make sure that, yeah, there is a config file. It's, manageable, not going to be gigantic because the stack is finite, is limited. I hope I answered your question. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, please.
If you're trying to track that you're monitoring enough things about each application, but your applications have application-specific things that go wrong, how do you detect that you're monitoring for all the application-specific things that go wrong?
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think I.
If you can speak.
Elaborate on that a little
Sorry
bit,
about
please.
that. Yeah.
Applications might have specific application-specific things that can go wrong.
Yes.
That you be monitoring for. If you're trying to track that you're monitoring sufficiently across the board, how do you automatically detect that?
Can you give an example of such a thing?
An example would be that you have a service where you're selling widgets and you want to track, if the number of widgets that's been sold is different than you expect. That's not tracking, how many times you hit the endpoint. That's tracking a domain-specific.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a good thing, right? So at Capital One, I think, and to your point, right, at any other place, right? So there's 3 layers of monitoring. One is the infrastructure layer monitoring. One is the APM, the application. How well is your application performing? And the last but not least, your customer experience, which is what is specific to that application. So I think what we want to make sure is at least the infrastructure layer and the application layer is well managed. And then when it comes to the customer experience monitoring, and that's where it is custom to that application. So right now that's not part of our scope. We want to make sure that at least the infrastructure and the application stack is well managed, and even for the customer experience monitoring, we are looking into it. But because it's so specific to that application, it's not easy to standardize. To your point, so we are still thinking. But.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Yeah, there are efforts actually going on that. We do monitor at a customer transaction layer, and in several cases we again apply machine learning and do volume anomaly detection, similar to what you are talking about. But like Prasad said, these are like very
it is specific, right?
Very
so
application specific.
You can't generalize
it. But we are looking at that, and that is part of our roadmap as well to standardize across those.
Thank you. Other questions? One more question? Yeah. One more question? Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, wanted to ask about how do you manage the versioning control on that?
On the standards or the?
On the Mac.
Mac?
Yeah.
Git.
So Git. Yeah. There was a question?
So I saw on your slides you mentioned scorecards.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that self-reporting, or do you?
Yeah, that's if you notice in Amit's demo, he was showing the pie chart and a compliance scorecard there. So we are basically calculating, again, goes back to, we tag everything. So we know exactly, what their stack looks like. And then we know what we want to monitor for the stack. So our scorecard is very simple at this time. So we say, hey, let's say if there are 10 things that you want to monitor, and if you're monitoring 8 of them correctly, and then the remaining 2 are not being monitored, so we say your scorecard is 80%. So it's a fairly simple math. There's no complex math there. Yeah.
So it's actually intended to give you an idea of how much effort you'll have to put in to make yourself 100%. So just quantifying it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry, it looks like we'll be available outside if anybody has more questions. Yeah, thank you.